With me now is Mariano de Alba, Venezuelan lawyer specializing in international law and foreign policy. Mariano, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin with this new election. Why is President Maduro only willing to hold a legislative election instead of a presidential election?
Well, the reason is very simple. That's because the legislative power is in the hands of majority control by the opposition. So obviously, a new election of Congress would allow Mr. Maduro to challenge the current power of the opposition. Instead, the other power, the executive, it's in his hands, and he's not willing to. At the present moment, he's not willing to go to an election because he knows that most probably, if he holds a free and fair election, he would lose that.
So this legislative election in the parliament is largely symbolic.
I mean, he has made that offer, but that's an offer which doesn't make a lot of sense. Why? First, because it's not the right time yet. The legislative elections, according to the Venezuelan Constitution, have a couple of more years to go before those elections are due. And second, the core of the crisis is it's not the issue with the Congress, where the opposition has a majority, but also Chavismo has a representation. The issue is that last year in May 2018, there were the Maduro government called for presidential elections, but those elections were not considered free and fair by the Venezuelan people nor by a large part of the international community. So calling for an election of Congress does not solve the current crisis and the present issue.
But do you think this legislative election will take place? And if so, how will the results affect the power dynamics between Maduro and Guaido?
I still don't see it happening because it could be a huge risk for the government calling this type of election. But I think that the play that the government is trying to advance is very clear. They want to put the opposition in the dilemma of deciding to participate or not in this election. And in the end, it is not so much about the election itself. I think that the pressure within the country and outside the country is that any election, presidential or whatsoever, has to have minimal conditions for it to be recognized by all the Venezuelan people and then by the international community.
Last time around, if I remember correctly, in the presidential election last year that you mentioned, the voter turnout was between well below 50%. It was something like 30, 40%.
Yeah, I mean, that was an election that was very, you could say that the signals that the election was not free and fair were quite evident. First, because the National Electoral Council has shown not to be independent. Second, the main opposition candidates were not allowed to run. And second, you also have a dynamic in which the government, by its program of subsidized food, it's trying to force public employees and people in dire need to vote in favor of the government. So I think that the issue in Venezuela goes back to resolving the electoral crisis, reinstating a free and independent National Electoral Council that shows or that portrays confidence to a vast majority of the Venezuelan people, and then go to a free or fair election which actually decides or solves the crisis.
Recently, a high-ranking Air Force general in Venezuela has defected to the opposition, and he called on his fellow comrades in the military to do so. Do you think this is a unique case, or does it suggest a weakening of Maduro's support in the military?
I think it suggests a very important weakening of Maduro's control in the military. This is not the first case, the one that you're mentioning. Over the last weeks, we have seen other cases, and also last year we saw a lot of military personnel being imprisoned by the Maduro regime because they expressed that they were not in agreement with how the country was being run. So I think that for Maduro, it is clear that the situation within the military is not optimal. However, he still remains, or he still has the support of the high-ranking officials that are necessary to remain in power. The push or the effort right now being led by the opposition in Venezuela is a call to the Venezuelan military to put themselves in the side of the Venezuelan constitution and in the Venezuelan people, so Maduro can go, and then there can be a free and fair electoral process that solves the crisis.
Mariano de Alba, a Venezuelan lawyer, thank you so much for being with us.